Hey there, this is Colette Broomhead. I'm a business coach and I help mum service providers who want to sell a 1K plus service to enroll consistent clients each month. And today I wanted to chat to you about pricing and, in particular, how to price your service. This can be a real sticking point for people. So I wanted to just sort of shed some light on what, in my opinion, is the best way you can approach pricing your service. So let's start by just touching on why this is really important, and finding that right price can make a real impact. So first of all, if we don't price our service in a way that feels right to us, perhaps it feels, inside deep down, it feels somehow underpriced or overpriced. That affects how we show up and sell. It's there, and it affects the way we speak about our service and the way we sell our service. Equally, it affects the way we show up for our clients. So, for example, if you feel like you are underpricing, ultimately that affects the energy that you bring to your service delivery, and worst case scenario, it can even end up making you feel resentful about having to work for a lower income than you're happy with. So how else can it affect your business? Well, of course, it can affect your bottom line. It can affect your actual income. If you are not charging enough money to allow you to, well, pay your bills, live the lifestyle that you want to live, that's going to have an effect as well. And then lastly, it's really important to note that the way we price our services is what we're telling our audience, that this is how I value my own service. So it's sending a really important message to your audience, to your potential clients. So pricing is pretty key. So how do we find the right price? Now, before I dive into what I see as the best way to price your service, I wanted to just chat a little bit about some of the common pricing mistakes that I see. Just so, to give you an opportunity to reflect and see if any of this is going on in your own business. So let's first talk about underpricing. Right. So this is a really common one, especially with the people I work with. I think women especially tend to be prone to underpricing. We undervalue ourselves. We feel this need to give our services away. If I can help someone, surely I shouldn't charge for that. There's a lot of that goes on in our minds. So another big thing that comes with underpricing, I think there's another big kind of belief that comes where we underprice, and that is that it's easier to sell something that costs less. We tell ourselves, if I don't charge too much, I will sell more because people are more likely to buy it if it doesn't cost so much. Now, this is a very simplistic way of looking at things. 9 times out of 10, if people aren't buying, it's actually nothing to do with the price. It's to do with your messaging, maybe your sales skills, maybe the size of your audience. There's a ton of stuff that's usually going on where we're not making the sales that we want to and not getting the number of clients that we want to. And very rarely is that anything to do with the price of your service. So that's one mistake. Just keep an eye on where we have this idea. The other reason for pricing low, one is this sort of kind of scarcity mindset almost. It's this, well, no one will buy. It's much easier to sell if I charge low. The other thing is it comes from a good place, and it's this want to be, I want to be accessible. I want people to be able to afford my service. Now, this is also tricky ground to get into, because ultimately affordability is completely subjective, right? Your idea of what's affordable is totally different to someone else's idea of what's affordable, and what we see as buyers, what we decide is affordable isn't just based on our actual financial means. Yes, of course, that comes into play, and sometimes we really want something and we just simply can't afford it. I really want to go to the Maldives, for example. Right now, I simply can't afford it. But there is also that balance to be had where we really, really want something enough, often we find a way, and we make it work because it's something that's a huge priority to us, and so we kind of put a lot more effort into making that financial situation work so that we can have the thing that we want. So there's that to bear in mind as well. So again, affordability, often not the case. Often not the problem when someone isn't buying. Often it's the messaging. It's that they just don't see this as a big enough priority for them right now. Okay, so that's one mistake I see people make, is this kind of undercharging, either because we want to be more affordable and accessible, or because we just think it's going to be easier to sell. Neither of which is necessarily true. Um, the next mistake I see quite often is charging by the hour, and for me, this is also leading to tricky ground, right? Because and you especially see sort of freelancers and people who are providing kind of done for you type services doing this, but it happens elsewhere as well. But the problem with this kind of pricing model is that as you improve your skills, as you become more experienced, you probably become faster. You probably become better, but you also become faster. And it just doesn't make sense that you should then be charging less because you're doing something faster. Because you're now more experienced and better at the job. And where we kind of follow a kind of pricing by the hour based pricing model, that's what ends up happening. So it can be, it also kind of undervalues your service, right? It kind of reduces your service down to, minutes and hours, or hours and days, or whatever it may be. And I imagine your service is actually a lot more than that. It doesn't count, for example, the experience you've had to get to the point where you can deliver this service, the qualifications, etc., etc. So it's a really kind of oversimplified pricing structure, in my opinion. Okay, so something else I also see happening is people being given, in my opinion, what is bad advice. I often hear kind of coaches and gurus or whatever giving this kind of think about what you want to charge and now double it type advice. Now, for me, this is quite dangerous advice, because I think for most of us, it takes a huge mindset jump, right? Because pricing is very mindset related. We have to feel good about the price that we're charging in order for us to be able to say it, in order for us to be able to sell effectively and in alignment. And if you suddenly double your prices, that takes a big jump mentally, to get comfortable with that price, to get used to saying that price, to kind of feel like that price is a good fit for you and your service. So for me, that often doesn't work that well, and can be quite dangerous advice. So if you've had someone tell you that, I would take it with a pinch of salt. And then the last mistake that I see, and this is very, very common and also very, very human, and that is taking on board the advice of other people when it comes to what you should price your service. Now, as a business coach, I have a lot of conversations with people about their pricing, and I am always really, really careful to avoid giving specific advice as to what I think that number should be for their service, because ultimately, my opinion doesn't matter. We all are kind of bringing our own sort of money mindset, money baggage, the stuff that we've been taught when we were kids about money, our own kind of value of different things and different priorities. And what I think about your price doesn't matter. So I think it's really easy, and I see a lot of people kind of posting in big, Facebook groups, what would you charge for this, or what would you pay for this? And what you will find if you do that is you will get a huge range of different responses, because again, we're all bringing different opinions, different values, etc., to the table when we give our answers. The only person whose opinion matters when it comes to your price is yours. Like, genuinely. As soon as you start thinking about, well, what about my ideal clients, surely I should know what they think about my price, Again, it's going to differ wildly as to people's own personal circumstances, where on that journey they are, how much of a priority your service is for them, and all of this. There's so many variables that as soon as you start trying to take on advice, you're never going to find a price that everyone out there agrees with. So just don't try. Find a price that you're happy with, and then go with that. Okay, so now I've talked a little bit about some of those mistakes. Let's talk about what I see as the best way to go about pricing your service. So I've got a few little tips for you. So the first one is, I've told you, like, don't price by the hour. So how should you price? Well, the first one is price according to the value that your service is delivering. Now, what I'm not saying here is, charge your value. I hear that advice a lot as well. And of course, like, your own personal value has nothing to do with the price of your service, like absolutely zero to do it. And again, there's dangerous ground there, because when you start to take on this kind of personification of your service, everything becomes very personal and very vulnerable and very difficult. So we separate ourselves and our personal value from the value of our service. But you need to be thinking about the value that your service delivers, and that's where you should be starting off when you're thinking about what an appropriate price might be. The second thing to think about is, what is a number that you are going to feel happy saying? So what you might find is, when you start to sort of work on, what your pricing should be, the figure that you want to charge, the amount that you want to be making, there might be a gap between that and where your head is right now, and where the number is right now that you would feel comfortable saying to a potential client, during a sales conversation. And that's fine, and that's normal. So what I would say is, obviously have in mind where you want to be with your price, but then also have in mind where you are realistically right now, and what you're going to be able to say, and still be able to kind of sell without feeling like you're going to be sick. And then create a plan to work towards that goal. Rather than going, hey, I'm just going to double my prices. For me, it makes so much more sense to just get there incrementally. Get a client at this price. Okay, that felt okay. I'm going to add an extra 100 quid, 50 quid, whatever it may be that you feel comfortable with. And just gradually work your way towards that income, that price that you want to get to. The third thing to consider when you are coming up with your price is, what is going to be a number that inspires you to show up for your clients, and to deliver great results. So this goes back to what I was saying at the start of the video, when I was saying, sometimes if we get that price wrong, usually when we're underpricing, we feel a sense of resentment, a sense of like, ugh, it doesn't excite us to go to work. So what's that number going to be that you're going to be excited to show up for? And then last but not least, make sure it's a number that makes sense financially. So often I have conversations with business owners who haven't actually sat down and done the maths to make sure that it's actually a realistic price for them to achieve their financial goals, not just to pay their bills, but of course that's very important. But like, think about the lifestyle that you want. Think about, well, I want to be able to get a takeaway every now and then, and I want to be able to go on a holiday, and I want to be able to do this and that. Figure out what that looks like in terms of how much money you need to be making, and make sure that your price is in alignment with that. Because so often people kind of don't put these two things together, and when you do, you realize that what you're charging is totally unrealistic when you're looking at your financial goals. So that's my final tip for pricing. I hope this has been helpful. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Was there anything there that particularly lit a light bulb in your head for you? Do you agree with my take on pricing? If not, let me know that too. I would love to know your thoughts. And before I go, I would love to offer you, you'll see in the description, there is a link to grab a free PDF, which is a guide on how to develop and fill your 1 to 3K service. So if you would like a copy of that, just head to the description. And then last but not least, I would really appreciate it if you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, and make sure you subscribe so that you can see more.